Roll call.
Parker? Here. Miscelinich?
Aye.
Olson?
Here.
Zittergrun? Here. Chisel? Here. Hadley? Neal?
Here.
Okay, is there anybody who wishes to speak to the council about anything that's not on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none. Police Department life-saving recognition. Chief Tyne?
Okay. It's a great day in the life of a police chief that I get to stand before you and acknowledge a second life-saving event within the city of Decorah within the last 6 months. That's hugely incredible. The benefits of having full-time, available, and immediate first aid is critical when time matters. Couple that with the unique partnership that develops between law enforcement and other emergency responders such as EMS and fire personnel, a community stands to benefit. On December 6, 2023 at around 3:21 p.m., which I might add, Sergeant Yitzen's shift starts at 3 p.m., so he's been on duty for 21 minutes. Dispatch received a call of a subject down outside of his residence. The caller happened to be a doctor, which is a really good thing, and began CPR immediately. Two-man CPR is exhausting. When one-man CPR is being performed, it's even more so. Fortunately, in less than 2 minutes, Sergeant Adam Yitzen arrived to help. He was able to offer assistance to the doctor on scene and was equipped with an AED, an automated external defibrillator. We know that early delivery of shock with a defibrillator coupled with CPR within 3 to 5 minutes of an individual's collapse can produce survival rates as high as 49 to 75%. The AED is estimated to save about 1,700 lives annually in the United States. The National Institutes of Health lament, though, that not enough Americans know to look for AEDs when they're out in public places, nor are they trained on how to use them correctly. Decorah police officers train on how to administer CPR correctly and on how to use the AED. Sergeant Adam Yitzen arrived that day with the tools and the skills to help save a life. His commitment to public safety and the community of Decorah aided in another Decorah citizen being able to celebrate this past holiday season with his family. For Sergeant Yitzen's ongoing dedication to service, placing the highest priority on the sanctity of life, I present this life-saving pin to be worn on a dress uniform, highly recognizable by other law enforcement. Sergeant Yitzen, I want to thank you for being a servant in action and for exemplifying what compassionate professional policing truly is, and present to you this certificate. This date, Sergeant Adam Yitzen, in appreciation of your dedicated life-saving public service on December 6, 2023, on which date you provided life-saving service to a citizen of the Decorah community, including CPR on the use of the AED. Signed by myself and the mayor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda.
Item A, minutes of the January 2nd, 2024 meeting. B, claims. C, resolution setting public hearing on amending Chapter 1716 related to digital and electronic signs. D, resolution directing Alliant Energy to replace a streetlight on Highland Drive. And E, special Class C retail alcohol license renewal, Mabe's Pizza.
Mayor, I'd like to remove item C from the consent agenda.
Okay, do we have to vote? We don't vote on that, right?
Nope.
Okay, we will move that down to directly after the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda without item C.
Second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Zittergrun to approve the consent agenda without item C. Any discussion? Roll call?
Olson.
Aye.
Zittergrun.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Chisel. Neal.
Aye.
Motion carried. And we'll go back to C, resolution setting public hearing on amending Chapter 17.16 relating to digital and electronic signs. Do you want to give background on that?
Sure. So the resolution, again, would set a public hearing based on changes that are being recommended through the P&Z Commission. The proposed changes, so currently, digital and electronic signs are prohibited in city code, but we have got an odd section in there that does reference they will be allowed based on 4 criteria. And then goes on later to say, but they're prohibited everywhere in town. So P&Z, at the request of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, took this under consideration and is recommending to allow digital signs, which we're going to differentiate between digital and electronic, where digital can have inputs from the owner put into a computer, and they can transition slide after slide after slide, like we see at the Quick Start locations or something like, Culver's and McDonald's, versus an electronic sign, which is a static sign put in by the owner, such as a fuel price light at Decorah Mart, that the inputs are put in, displayed electronically, but they don't change. That differentiation was made. Digital signs would be allowed in all industrial and commercial zoning districts, except the C3 district, and electronic signs would be allowed in all industrial and commercial districts, but in the C3, the electronic signs would be required, like their hours of operation would be limited to the business hours of operation. Both digital and electronic signs would be limited to 0.3-foot candles at preset distances. Any digital sign visible from nearby residential zoning district needs to be no closer than 150 feet. And these were all put together by comments we received from different sign manufacturers and vendors to put in front of Planning and Zoning Commission to draft this ordinance.
Okay.
Should note probably, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
should note that Historic Preservation did also weigh in that they were appreciative that P&Z took into consideration the C3 district and that digital signs were excluded and liked the language.
Did they have any other concerns or questions?
Have you got any feedback from any of the businesses or anything like that in reference to it?
No, so
No,
this
'cause
is,
it's
this
just
is
setting-
setting the
Right.
public hearing,
Okay.
which is, should in theory get the feedback.
Okay.
Do you want to wait for a motion on it?
Does this
Sure.
include, this is billboards as well, right? So,
Billboards have an extra layer as well. This would
This-
be just for any digital electronic signage, period.
so there are digital billboards that I'm unclear how they made it through our code,
Variance.
through variance. And this does not affect those.
They would still have to get this, so a billboard is permissible through C1 zoning district through a special, what do we call it? Special use permit, I believe. Through a special use permit. And there's like 9 criteria they're supposed to meet for, again, the Zoning Board of Adjustment to grant those. Those are a little different than a variance. So the billboard itself is a special use permit, but the digital part was the variance.
Okay. So then my other question is, the only thing we're talking about is setting a public hearing, but if we don't support the ordinance, should we be bringing that up now?
If, this is kind of a sticky, what you want the council as a whole to be considering at the time of the public hearing is what the council should set for public hearing. So I can't really say, well, if you don't agree with it, then yes, you still need to set a public hearing on it. No. But as the council as a whole, whatever the council is considering for the ordinance should reflect what the council wants approved, potentially.
So
Did I
should,
voice that right, John?
so the discussion could be had before they make a resolution to set a public hearing?
Yeah.
So if there's some concerns, then they should voice them now.
Especially if you want any changes in what's been drafted, so that the potential changes would be in the notice that goes to the public.
Oh, go ahead.
No. I mean, I was going to say, and the other question I had is, in looking through, the size of the signs has not changed.
Correct,
In any current area, so they still have to remain of the size that they are.
correct.
Go ahead, Steve.
I just, to start with, let me just say that I continue to appreciate staff putting things onto the consent agenda and continue to do that. Don't feel like because we take them off that's, I appreciate being more efficient in the meetings that way. So I'm going to urge my fellow council members to, if we move forward with allowing for digital electronic signage, that we, I guess, make it as maximally restrictive as you're willing to tolerate. I don't appreciate the process that got us here, which is that the Board of Adjustments continues to allow for variances to the ordinances that this body establishes, such that they say, hey, this is a problem. We keep giving people permission to do something that the code says they're not supposed to do. So let's fix that by you all just making it legal for them to do it. I don't think that's the way that the Board of Adjustments is supposed to operate. And I would like that communicated to them. I have sometimes thought about going to a meeting and talking to them about that. I think it's better for us to decide what's in the best interest of the city and not what our, an appointed board doing as the status quo. Let's make sure that that's legal. As far as, I do appreciate that this protects the C3 district from, additional electronic signage. I don't think that it's expansive enough in its restrictions. I think that there are a lot of other places where there's, a lot of pedestrian traffic, where there's, and as a council, we encourage, additional, I guess, pedestrian and bike traffic wherever possible. And I think that this takes us in the wrong direction from that. When people are driving down a street and there's signs, screaming for their attention, there has to be an appropriate, I'm glad that this has some restrictions. It doesn't allow you to have flashing billboards or animations or, things that look like a stop sign or that say danger. But even a sign that transitions graphically it takes eyes off the road, which is when you're driving down a street that you're sharing with children crossing the street on the way to school, people walking from campus to downtown to support our businesses, or if you're using a bike on that street. I don't think you want another thing that takes people's eyes off the road. I don't think that they're visually that pleasant to be, it doesn't, I guess, visually I think it's distasteful to drive through communities that have lots and lots of electronic and digital signage up and down their commercial corridors. And I guess I'm just opposed to this because I think it takes us in the wrong direction. I think there's other good ways for the great businesses in town to vie for the attention of passersby.
I've got a question.
And can I say one last thing, then I'm done talking? I'm sorry, Mayor. But go ahead. Actually,
No.
I just don't want to go on another rant if I start over. So I was just going to say, if we allow signs, I think that they should be in places where there isn't pedestrian traffic and bike traffic. I think they should be along the highways. If we're going to allow digital signs, that's where I'd like to see them.
Okay, I have a question. If they aren't allowed, correct, right now?
Mhm.
How did the question get to the Board of Adjustment then? Or did somebody want that put on their agenda, or how did that work?
So it was several months ago, P&Z actually reached out via myself as staff to Zoning Board of Adjustment and said, what do you guys keep seeing that is maybe a zoning ordinance that's too restrictive that we should reconsider? So P&Z initiated the communication with the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and they came back with, honestly, this was the only one they said that, we're seeing more and more of these because that's where the sign industry is trending, that changing them electronically or digitally as opposed to the inserts or something like that. So that's how this started.
Okay, because this is a Board of Adjustment that works with signs and such?
Variances in general.
Okay.
So they were seeing more of these variances, whether it was the digital billboard that came forward or even digital signs for, now I'm drawing a blank. Couple recent commercial businesses, digital sign requests, and then the ones that are existent today prior to that weren't variances were actually part of commercial site plan reviews.
Okay.
because
I
of
just
two-
wanted to make sure that we weren't, kind of getting on Board of Adjustment when it was a discussion that actually did need to come before the council for consideration.
Well, that's why it's in front of council now,
Right,
because
that's
P&Z
right.
has reviewed it and is recommending an ordinance
Okay.
change.
Okay.
I will also go on record, I will be much shorter than Steve. I don't want to see digital signs in Decorah. I'm saddened by the ones that were given approval by Board of Adjustment. I think it is the responsibility of the city council to set the vision. We're the elected officials that set the vision for Decorah, and I don't think that we are a community that is trying to lure into big city lights, right, and the distractions that they hold. So I appreciate that the C3 is left out, but I think the C2 that essentially outlines our downtown is at risk of too many flashing digital signs. I also feel a little bit like this is sort of like a slippery slope of now we have it in the ordinance. I can only see the Board of Adjustment now saying that they can move, they can flash, they can do these things. So I'm not supportive of the ordinance because of the digital signs. I'm more open to the electronic. I understand, Quick Star's little lights that sit there, but I'm not in support of digital signs.
So my next question is then, should we be studying this more, or do you want more clarity from staff to clarify it more before you set a public hearing, or do you have to set the public hearing at this point?
Well, P&Z has already reviewed and made recommendations. So
Okay.
if it's something that the council wants to kick back down to P&Z,
Okay.
I would say we'd start it over down there.
What is P&Z, did they take this up because some businesses downtown had requested clarification on this or something, or how did this come to?
No, so it all stemmed from that conversation. P&Z reached out to zoning board adjustment and said, what are you seeing for variances that maybe we're too restrictive on? ZBA came back and said, honestly, digital signs, we're seeing those. That's something we think you should consider. Then when downtown signs were discussed, there was a couple, and one of which that comes to mind. So Verizon has that TV inside the window that we could technically call that a digital sign in the C3 district because it's the nature of its display. Yes, it's a TV display inside the window, but it's right up against pointed out. And again, the strictest interpretation of our sign ordinance would say that's a sign. So items like those were considered by P&Z, that we don't want a bunch of those in the C3 district. However, there are other areas that make sense. There was not a lot of discussion on the C2 versus C1 highway commercial, or the C4s and 5s up in the business parks. Not a lot of conversation there.
I mean, I don't even want the entrances to our community flooded with digital signs, right? So, I mean, I understand that, and it bothers me, I will say, that if they're asking about what about our code is too restrictive, and we have a housing issue that we're trying already to figure out, like, how do we make that least restrictive, that they went to signs, but I don't know, I'm just so anti-digital signs.
Okay.
I guess my only feeling on it would be that I would like to hear from some of the businesses that are actually utilizing these signs before we decide to not even put it up on, for a vote or consider it. I'd like to hear some of their input as to what their feelings on it and why they think it's necessary to have those.
Which is why we would be setting a public hearing.
So we could essentially set the public hearing and then have businesses, public, come speak their opinion. And then after that, look at this ordinance and vote whether or not we want to move forward with it.
But
Okay.
if we then change the ordinance, if we just amend it, then we have to have another public hearing. I mean, I think if we have a public hearing, we could certainly have a work session where we're going to talk about signs and invite the public to come and talk about digital signs, which I think is more aligned with how this process should work. If we're setting a public hearing, that means we have an ordinance that we're serious about, want to pass, and if they come and make comment, and then we change it, we have to host another public hearing. So that's...
So what I might point out is a work session is meant to be the work of the council and is not supposed to be a public participation component.
Yes,
That-
sorry,
Right.
that's
I
fine.
might-
Yeah, no, I can withdraw that, sorry.
But that's not to say it's a combination of what Councilmember Parker has pointed out. If it's set the public hearing, you don't even have to act on it. You don't have to approve or disapprove of it. can hold said hearing, work session, the ordinance afterwards, and if there are substantial changes, and John will be the one to say whether they're substantial or not. If there's substantial changes, yes, we set a new public hearing, consider a new ordinance. However, let's say the change is, well, instead of 0.3 foot candles at 150 feet, we're gonna make it 200. I don't know that that's a substantial enough change that requires a new public hearing.
Well, and P and Z brought it to the council attention and want more information as well, so. Didn't you just say?
That P and Z wants?
I mean, yeah, didn't P and Z ask this to come before the council?
Oh, yes, sorry, I thought you were saying P and Z wanted more information.
No.
I would suggest kicking it back to P and Z and saying, that amending the ordinance to not include digital signs. That electronic signs, we could look at electronic signs in anything but the C3 district, but that digital signs shouldn't be present in city limits, except for the ones that have
Sort of like,
variances.
who comes first?
And
horse or
I guess I would like to hear the input from the community in reference to those before we make a
That's
decision.
possible to do without us all meeting as a body and inviting business leaders, casual conversations, making phone calls to local
Yeah.
leaders. We could do that in the meantime. That's all. I said
It's
I
a
would
little
talk
bit
about.
how we did scooters. I can't really bring it up. Remember, we did
Crazy.
ask that the public give input to council members on digital signs, but I guess that is fair. I wouldn't mind hearing from constituents about how they feel about digital signs. But
So
that is,
actually, it's set on the agenda as a resolution, so we should act on it in one fashion or another. Is that, okay,
I think we ought to have the public hearing. I'd
Right.
make that motion.
okay.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Chisel, seconded by Olson, to set the public hearing. And now we had discussion,
Yeah, we had quite a bit of discussion.
so, okay. Roll call?
Jizzle,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Misselinich,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
No.
Hadley,
Setting a public hearing, yes? Can you
Setting the
repeat can you
hearing,
repeat the motion on the table?
Yep, it is a resolution setting a public hearing on amending 1716
Aye.
related to digital and electronic signs.
Aye.
Neil,
no,
that's everyone, right? Parker, sorry.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. When do we set that?
Be the second meeting in February.
Too small print. Okay.
Yeah, February 19th.
Okay. Okay. Conduct a public hearing on amending section 17.120.015 and chapter 17.14 related to Decorah floodplain district and floodplain management. Can you give background on that, please?
Okay, I'm gonna give the first bit of background. Jeremy can kind of help with this. I'll lump the background for both item 6, which is the public hearing portion, and 7 is the actionable item. So this is again amending the floodplain district and floodplain management ordinance. Essentially, the city was sent from FEMA a draft ordinance in electronic form with some green highlights that said, fill in City of Decorah here and other applicable, make it City of Decorah's ordinance with these highlights. And here's 2 paragraphs highlighted in yellow. You can pick A or B for each one, A being more stringent, B being less stringent, and have this approved by February 22nd, or you cannot participate in the NFIP anymore. So, the NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, that allows people that need to buy flood insurance for their homes. It's through this NFIP program, it's subsidized. So you get a cheaper insurance rate, or cheaper insurance premiums, excuse me. And so P&Z has recommended putting forward with the 2 paragraphs, which are both related to the new interior ponding areas. So once the levee wall, flood wall's shut, floodgates shut, the water then that fills up behind the levee is now called an interior flood area, right? Interior ponding area, excuse me. So that area will now be considered floodplain in a sense, where homeowners in that area will be required to pick up flood insurance. And so there were those 2 options, more stringent, less stringent, were all based on the interior flooding areas, interior ponding areas. P&Z is recommending that the council adopt the least restrictive requirements of the interior ponding area. However, we are looking to participate in FEMA's community rating system, which will further lower premiums for everyone needing flood insurance through the NFIP. And there might come a point in the scoring system that either the city will be required to adopt the more stringent interior ponding area, or we're just short of a certain score that we might come back and recommend adoption of the more stringent to give us a higher score and further lower premiums for those needing flood insurance.
But if we do nothing, people would not have the option to be able to get flood insurance. Is that correct?
Not through the NFIP, which is subsidized and makes the premiums cheaper.
Okay.
So yeah, you'd have to still buy flood insurance if you've got a federally backed mortgage, now at a higher rate.
If we don't adopt them now, there's no chance that they'll score us and be like, no, you can't do it at all. Okay.
No, I know what you're getting at. They're not going to say, well, we've reconsidered and we're.
Okay. I make a motion that we adopt ordinance amending section. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so we're actually conducting the public hearing. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to this item on the agenda? Hearing seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and then we'll consider an ordinance amending it.
Go for it.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance amending section 17-120-015 and chapter 17-140 related to Decorah floodplain district and floodplain
Second.
management.
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Olson, to approve as stated. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Okay, resolution setting building and zoning permit application fees.
Okay, my apologies at the last meeting about the presentation of this. We've we've pulled together a few additional documents, put it in the Dropbox. Hopefully, those that wanted an opportunity to speak with Greg direct had the opportunity to do so since the last discussion of this. But again, the main reason this is being put in front of council, Sustainability Commission voted to recommend changing solar permit application fees from a value-based to a flat $75 application for residential, and leaving value-based for commercial, but capping that permit fee at $500. So that's one consideration as part of the attachments. But in addition to that, we've included items that were previously considered by council for both building permit as well as zoning fees. And if you remember, the hang up the last meeting was on the building permit side. We were talking about valuations. And so all of those valuations are based on a fixed square footage rate that we have already set. And I know there was a question posed at the last meeting about what about adjusting that valuation table? And so the International Building Code no longer sets residential valuation rates. They only do that for commercial. And so they leave now the residential up to the local district. So that's what we have established right now are the is the table in Dropbox. So that value is static, but the proposed rates based on the value would then increase.
Did we have a permit fee previously for solar panels? Somebody putting solar, do we have a fee at all for that, a permit fee?
We did, and
Oh.
it was value-based.
Oh, okay. So we did have a fee prior to that, okay.
Yep.
I will make a motion that we support the fee changes in the 3%, that one.
3%?
Yeah. I want to just thank Greg very much. I sat down with him. He explained things so well, so thank you for all of that. And when asked if he felt like we needed to go to the 6%, he didn't. He said no, he thought the 3% was sufficient, and I really appreciated the honesty with that, for sure. Again, sitting down with him was invaluable, and I think this is an important step for his department. So I would support the 3% changes.
I would second that motion, and I would also like to thank Greg for sitting down with Emily and I both and going through that. I think a lot of us were confused at where we got the values for the permit fees and stuff like that, but Greg thoroughly explained it, and appreciate your time.
Can you go back to the Sustainability Commission and find out if this action, if adopted by resolution, would also enhance our Soul Smart rating that we approved several years as a council to streamline onboarding of solar in our community, and it does give us a better rating in the Soul Smart as a program. And I know we had done some things with permitting and solar exposure protection that we'd written into code. And I believe that if we lower the barrier, I think that does get us to the next level for Soul Smart certification. So I would just ask staff to look into that.
I have a lot of emails back and forth.
Okay,
Oh,
awesome.
For those in Zoom, the answer is yes, it does. Greg just said that.
Okay. So you have a motion by Neal and seconded by Olson for the 3%. We had a comment about the Soul Smart, and you have.
I was just going to say, I really appreciate that the staff and the Sustainability Commission helped us get a little bit more granular on making sure that our solar fee reflects the actual cost of providing the inspection service. You know, the solar panels doesn't take the same amount of inspection to inspect $100,000 worth of solar panels as it does to inspect $100,000 worth of new home construction. And I know that we can't always be perfectly granular in setting permitting fees to, you know, reflect exactly how expensive it is for us to provide those inspections. But when there's a big mismatch like this one was, it's good for us to make the fee the right size for the service we're providing. And the fact that it also helps us accomplish our sustainability goals is a feather in the cap of this price correction.
And our carbon goals, you know.
That's what I meant by sustainability
Yeah.
goals. Yeah.
Okay. Roll call?
Neal,
Hi.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Motion carried. Discussion on council committees and council rules and procedures. Travis?
Sure. Okay, so some council members have talked about the current committee structure that's in place and utilizing work sessions instead. If you did review the survey feedback from the goal-setting session, that was actually the highest comment, with 6 comments about organizational effectiveness, was just that, questioning the effectiveness of the committee structure. And so what I would encourage council is have that conversation around council committees first, and then the rules of procedure, which are also in the packet, do reference that committee structure and how those meetings are called and things like that. So I would encourage council to have your conversation around the committee structure first, and then we'll move on to the rest of the rules of procedure.
I did put out a question to the Iowa mayors. I got a couple replies, and then I did some calling too, and what I found out was this type of a setup was set for cities that did not have a city manager, that once the city manager came, they altered those. One city said that they had council members that were set as liaisons between the council and the different departments. That was one comment. But most of them, since they had city managers, that was not an issue, that they, if there were specific issues, that they would set up a committee to be able to deal with something. In the last year, I don't know how many actual committee meetings we've had. We've done more work in the work session.
I would say less than a half dozen, I think.
I think we have one utility meeting, and we probably have a quarterly safety meeting.
The public safety meeting is the only one that we just need to figure out how you want to do that.
The public,
And we've had street meetings.
well, and you know, like, the rural public safety is one because you're actually working with rural as well.
Yep.
So there is,
But it wouldn't be bad to have that actually happen with the full council,
Right.
given,
those are just some of the things that I found out, so.
Mayor, can you tell us what cities that you did discuss that with?
Sure. I talked with Atlanta. I talked with Council Bluffs, and that's a little bit different because they have a strong mayor form where the mayor is city manager also. I talked with Rick at Algona, and they had some committees set up. One was Ways and Means, Streets and Sewers, Insurance and Pension, Public Safety and Nomination. Let's see, was there, let me make sure, wasn't a whole lot beyond that. So those are the ones that I heard from.
I would be in favor of dissolving the committee structure. I think that the way that we work as a council seems to work well when we can all be present in the decision-making process. I think, I feel like there was a transition in my first 4 years where committees were pretty heavily utilized the first year or two. And I felt what would happen is 4 council members would get together, decide something, bring it to bigger council, and either they'd get really frustrated by the one council member that was like, no, or it was like the other council members were like, well, they've already got the vote and decided, right? Without any, and so to me, it sort of leaves out the discussion of the people that council person represents, right? I mean, one of the beauties of the way in which we're designed, we all represent different wards, except for a few of us who are at large, and so I feel like each council member holds those constituents as representation, and I think they deserve representation in all discussions related to it. So I'd like to say that last year we were doing really well using that fourth Monday as work sessions. I'd like us to be pretty consistent in that Monday, coming together to work session, the things that we would normally be doing in committees. So.
The only thing I guess I'd add to it is the fact that just in the couple of years I've been on the council, seems like every time we've had a committee meeting, this council is interested enough that almost everybody shows up at every one of those meetings anyway, so it seems like it would be just productive to put it in as a work session, as well as I think when this topic came up last year, one of the things we brought up was the idea that so many of the individual things that projects or stuff that we discuss have crossover between the different committees anyway, so most everybody is involved with each of those discussions anyway, so it seems to me that would be beneficial just to put it into a work session and go forward from there.
I would also support the work session concept. I think that, especially with new council members, it's good to have exposure to all things so that you have a greater understanding of things that might be minutia that if you're not at the committee meeting, you don't get that feedback or education or from the department heads, because really we're taking strong advice from our council, of the department heads, and the council is getting counseled, and I think having it done holistically is really important for cross training as well. So I mean, even if we don't adopt this, like Kirsten said, encouraging people to come to everything, because there is a learning curve. So, yeah, I guess I would support it, especially, and not completely altruistically, because we get paid.
And that was one reason I thought too. Only that I think you deserve to be paid for the time that you're doing. Travis, can you give feedback as far as different cities that you've worked for and how maybe it worked for you? I don't remember what you had said as far as Humboldt, how that was.
Yeah, so in Humboldt, they did not have committee structure anymore. As you pointed out, Mayor, that it is fairly typical that after you get either city manager or city administrator form of government where it's an appointee of the council, typically those committees either become less and less utilized to the point that they actually stop functioning or don't function like what they were originally meant to do. Because the original structure with committees those chairs were basically bits and pieces of what my job is. So the street committee chair essentially was responsible for the oversight of the street department and that part of the organization. The same with the utilities and public safety and all those things. Those individual council members basically took a piece of what the city administrator or city manager does on a day-to-day basis and take that on. So typically as a city brings on the administrator manager form, those committees go away. And so I'm willing to bet that this community, well, I'm not willing to bet, I know this community structure predates Jerry Freund, the first city administrator, true city administrator here in Decorah. And again, we've seen the use of them less and less as we go along. I guess I don't have much more to add other than that.
Randy, I know that you and I had talked, and I know that you've
Yeah.
supported the committee structure.
You know, that's what I've come into, under Jerry Freund as our city administrator. My experience has been that utilizing the committees in some aspects made us a little bit more nimble, because the street committee, we would sit down with the city engineer and the city administrator, and we would meet and we would get the 6-month plan or 3-month, you know, whatever we were working on at the time. If we had questions, say we did it tonight after this meeting, and we had questions, we could get those answered prior to the next meeting, and we'd be able to move forward with it. I mean, there was times we could get something done in 2 to 3 weeks versus waiting until the 4th Monday of the month and then having questions, so you put it off to the next 4th Monday of the month. Now you're a month, 2 months out on some things. And there's some times where, you know, it's easier when you have a committee that's just meeting. I'm gonna pick on Mike because I'm looking at him. A wastewater treatment facility, you know, getting a small group to kind of get the nuts and bolts and then get that information out to the rest. And these committees have always been open. I mean, everybody was always invited. It was just required of the 4 to be there. And then notes were taken at that time so that the public knew what was going on, because we did have a quorum, so they were official meetings. Like I said, for me, it's just been much better and easier to move things forward through the system, even with city managers, and you're our 3rd one that I've worked for, so.
I think that, you know, when I look at let's say if you're looking at the wastewater treatment plant, you know that's gonna be a bigger project.
Right, and,
So in that instance, then.
but if
that-
Mike needs a new digester out there, or, or a capital improvement that's not in our plan, sometimes it's nicer to meet and then figure out the financing side of it, and then bring it to the full council after some research is done, so that people understand what's
There's a
going on.
little bit of piece of me that says that kind of is the way, like when Travis works with Mike and works with some of that, and then brings it to the council for discussion, and the whole council works with it, correct?
It'd be the same concept, yeah.
Sort of the
whether it's
same
4 people or
concept,
7.
yeah.
Which direction are you getting to the entrance to the problem? I mean,
That's true, that's
And-
correct.
And to Randy's point, I think it was especially beneficial before we had an in-house engineer for the street
Yes,
department,
yes.
because with an outside engineer and outside bid documents being drawn and things like that, it
think that
it was beneficial to have a smaller structure to get things done. But now that we have now that we have in-house engineering, and Travis and Carrie and the engineer can put together our own bid packets in-house, you know, we can schedule it and time it such that we have very little problem with that. And, you know, we are working on having things in place prior to Thanksgiving each year if possible. So we have time to pre-engineer and whatnot, so we're not having to be reactionary. So I think the work session concept would still work, given the change of structure and especially on streets.
I'm grateful for Randy's perspective. You know, he's been around a lot longer than many of us. When I was elected and the mayor named me the head of the Betterment and Community Development and Housing Committee, I ordered a bunch of books off of Amazon about housing policy and you know, sort of the things related that touch on community betterment. And I was grateful for that. I was grateful that I was given a portfolio and told, well, not told, but I felt obliged to learn a lot about something and be especially informed on, you know, it's our job to be informed about many of these things, all of these things, but I felt it was valuable to me to have a specific portfolio assigned to my care. And I think that that's led to some good things for the city, because I've, you know, taken those things seriously. And I would say the same for, you know, the committees that other council members have led. I'm sure Ross has learned more about bituminous mixes and hot patching than he'd like to. So I would, if we went away from the committee structure, I would hope that we could all still sort of identify things to specialize in, and that we weren't leaving things unpaid attention to. I would appreciate about dissolving the committee structure that our meeting timing could get more consistent. It would, you know, it's always weird for me to figure out, is this one of the Mondays where we're meeting at 5 or 4:45 or 5:15? So I think that would make us more efficient and keep us on a routine that would work better for the public, the staff, and for the council.
And that's for like work sessions?
Well, what would happen is we'd have committee meetings at 5. So if we get rid of committee meetings at 5,
I see.
which I'm hopeful that we will,
Right.
then we just have work sessions that start at 5:45. I agree with Steve. I think, you know, for me, getting to meetings at 5 was always difficult in the first place. I think committee meetings sometimes happened at times when council members couldn't be there, which was also very frustrating. So I would encourage that as we move, hopefully we'll move away from committees, that we just establish a regular time for our work session consistent with council meetings.
And I guess the last thing that I wanted to say is that it seems like the committees might be helpful to manage staff that acted too independently. You know, I don't know how to say that sort of politely. I think one of the great things about the staff that we've assembled and been lucky to assemble is that they do take direction from the council's agenda, and they enact it as faithfully and rigorously as I think they understand to be able to do. If that changed, you know, I would want more of a direct hand. I would maybe want to ask, what about a return to the committee structure? But things are strong in that department now, and so I wouldn't be as afraid of experimenting with trying something new, knowing that if we try this and it's terrible, we can always start the committees back up.
Well, and I think that's kind of showcases that kind of a ongoing checks and balances between the city manager and what's going on as far as the detail is
I
concerned.
do
And
like
I
the
would-
one thing that Steve said, though, that each person here is a champion for a different pillar within the structure. And I feel that's important too, so, you know, if I know Ross is the street committee chair and I've got issues with the streets, people call. I don't know how many calls you get, I know Gary used to get a lot.
I talk to people.
But then,
Yeah, you know, and that's, you know, you're the champion for the streets, so.
Well,
you
it
get
could be,
those, then you can bring them back
it would
to
be
Jeremy,
similar
bring them
to
a
like
committee.
having liaisons, council liaisons that go to the different departments.
yeah, but I do want to clarify the idea of checks and balances in our role, right? I mean, it isn't our role to actually oversee department heads. Our role
Yeah.
is to, through Travis, right, direct Travis to oversee department heads. And I think one of the problems with committee structure is that then I would imagine department heads are like, who is it that I'm actually answering to? The council committee that oversees my work or the actual city manager? And I do think it's important that staff feel as though Travis is who they answer to and Travis answers to us. And so insofar as if there are things that we need to direct, we should be directing that through Travis. And then as far as sort of the expertise or what it is that we have as council, I think we all have different passions. So again, and I've not been shy about my frustration with committees, right? Because the issues I ran on and the issues I care most deeply about, I wasn't on those committees, right? Because it wasn't my choice, or I didn't get to sort of choose the committee that I was on. And even though I'm not on certain committees, I would want my constituents to call me related to those issues, and they do. And so I guess as far as the public's perception, I want them to think that all of us have our hands in all things important related to the city, and not that, oh, if I'm going to think about streets, I have to call Ross, and if I'm going to think about this, I need to call who, right? And that we are accessible on all issues related to cities, related to our constituents.
Well, part of it, with the discussion, there's really no action required, but part of it is starting out with the work sessions, evaluating how they're going, you know, at 2 or 3 months, and see how it's going, and what would you like to be, what kind of directions you want?
Can I make a comment before you turn it back over to Travis?
Yeah.
Just because I have had frustration with the work session structure as well.
Okay.
I don't feel that it's been managed effectively. And that is not a knock to you, Mayor, or to you, Travis, necessarily. I think it's because it was kind of this in-between of committees and work sessions, and it kind of was half done on both sides, that we lost the structure or exposure to some of our committees because work sessions never occurred. And I think having a work session on utilities where all of the utility heads and all the utility come in and educate us on the CIP and challenges and things like that, kind of like what we do with our committee appointment, our outside committee appointments with SMID and Betterment and Jobs and things like that, where those people come in and speak to us as well. I would just like some more structure in our work sessions.
Okay.
And maybe say, okay, half of the work session is dedicated toward what used to be a committee, and it revolves, and half of it is work session, like the things that we have to discuss to operate and have discussions prior to it coming to ordinance or resolution. But having some sort of structure where we get exposure to all the aspects, I think would be important.
You know, I kind of hear what you're saying in the sense that when you come to a work session, there is a structure to it, and that there should be information that is included in the packet for when you come to that work session versus just sort of sitting down and having a discussion, roundtable discussion.
So in the council rules of procedure, it actually does talk about, there's one paragraph as it relates to council work sessions, and it does talk about that it's the fourth Monday of each month at a time agreeable by council or set by the mayor. The purpose of the work session is to review upcoming action items, to plan and conduct research, or review items for possible action. A special work session may be called by the mayor or upon petition of 3 members of the council, and shall require notice in compliance with Iowa law. And then it goes on further. Only matters placed on the agenda for work session meetings shall be discussed. So if this is, we want a standing meeting, this is not a, like, it doesn't require 3 council members to tell me that we're having a special meeting and this is what I want on the agenda.
And why would we require 3 to put it on a work session agenda when it's 2 to put it on a council agenda?
do a regular agenda.
That's egregious, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What is the code? What's the code number that you're reading from?
This is the council rules of procedure. This is not
Rules and
code.
procedures, gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ross's idea that throughout the year we have, particular, like, streets and, obviously we're gonna need public safety for reviewing with rural fire and such, but that it's sort of during those work sessions we can hear updates from departments. I think that's a great idea.
Well, and it will be able to, if we do that, it would be able to tie in to the Thanksgiving goal. So you can have your street committee work session in the fall to educate prior to the meeting where you'd be taking action to approve the street budget to allow for work over over winter. So, there still would be the ability to have some continuity and provide stability to our department heads. Mike, maybe you want to have yours before you start hauling, because that you're doing things. Or, Greg, that yours is, that when construction season's on, you want to have things done well before construction season so that people can have exposure to anything like that, so, yeah, I guess.
I just want to kind of point out my opinion that I am also
Yeah.
in favor of getting rid of the committees. I do have a quick story, and by the way, the department head, the city manager, and the committee head no longer is here, so just throwing that out there. But I'm aware of a department head that wanted to bring something to council. The city manager said you have to go through the committee. The committee chair didn't think it was important and wouldn't pull a committee meeting for it, and therefore the city manager wouldn't put it on the council agenda, and it just kind of got shoved back. So having those experiences and knowing that has happened has worried me a little bit about the committee situation. So I do think, as far as staff is concerned in their particular departments, it could very well benefit them as well, is if they do have a boss. He's right here, right? And taking those issues to him, and then them figuring it out, and then bringing it to council for us to review at those special agenda, or those work sessions.
I appreciate your input on that.
I just want to make sure I heard right. Department head's not here, city manager's not here, nobody present, right?
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Gotcha.
I just want to clarify, Ross, were you saying that we should have, if we have a work session every 4th Monday, do we want to assign a department to each one of those Monday nights to have?
Yeah, a
like
theme,
that-
a
that
theme.
department be that theme for that night? Or do we
Well,
need to-
that or if.
For half of, for half of it,
Okay,
because,
okay.
half of it, we have exactly, what you read, I think, is good. Like, there are things that we need to react to and learn about and discuss that are actionables for future votes to bring to the table, that are just operational things that we need to suss out rather than sitting here and having a 45-minute discussion, But, which is very beneficial. But I think having a formal structure process
Okay.
to make sure that we get exposure and whatnot is is a good thing.
So, I mean, if we set that up, then we'd have like 12 of those, so you want to like you said, streets would work best like in October or something like that, so it'd have that like a standardized thing every year, we'd have those.
Yeah.
street meetings.
I would,
Okay.
I guess I wouldn't want to say that like because sometimes it's, when do we need to talk about the department, right? I mean, for example, the water department, or water treatment plant, right? We're going to need to talk about that. And it may not be June, if that's their month, when we need to. And so I guess there's a part of me that thinks.
Right, but
it
half
would
of
be-
that meeting is operational, so if there's something that needs to come up because it's time sensitive or,
Right. No, I'm just saying, I don't think we should schedule like, this month is this one, this month is this one. I think we should be a little bit more organic in the, when they come during the year.
Well, I think what Ross was saying, that would only encounter half of it would be that particular department's time, and we'd have another half of that meeting where we could actually discuss a specific topic,
You know-
like you said, for the wastewater treatment plant.
There's a
At that
piece
point.
to me, there's a piece when you're trying to set things, it's that you may have two topics for a work session, and you don't have enough time for the department. I mean,
Agreed.
that's where I want the fluidity and
Okay.
what's set on as far as the work sessions are concerned. But that's one of my
I
considerations.
have no doubts that this group could fill any number of work sessions with discussion. And so I don't think it'd be great just as to assume that there's going to be a meeting every fourth Monday. I'd rather it be as needed and be flexible and limited to the time necessary. In particular, there's a lot of holidays that fall around those times, and I don't think we want to bind future councils or ourselves to meetings on the fourth
Well-
Mondays of every month.
And there's enough that we do have to have a meeting, fourth meeting in February, so.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was gonna offer, I would not suggest having a set
No.
one every, because the fourth Monday in December is probably gonna be pretty hard pressed to get attendance. The same with actually January, if we're gonna have budget prep with work sessions already dedicated, plus 2 council meetings, I don't know that the council's gonna wanna necessarily have an extra work session in that month as well.
and then summer, you don't want to have work sessions during the summer.
Wait a
So
minute,
really-
we do want to have work sessions.
But honestly, those were the 2 that popped into my head immediately, was that fourth Monday in December is gonna be hard pressed. The same with January, you're gonna have a lot of council fatigue from budget work sessions and things like that.
I mean, I guess those, like the 2 meetings we got already scheduled for the budget in January could constitute that work session for those,
Well,
for the
and I am
budget.
gonna actually,
Right.
I'm gonna ask council that we hold another work session
gotta have
next week
another
on
one.
Monday
Yeah, you
to
do.
discuss something else. But
Okay,
anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that I think work sessions should be as needed, but that council should be prepared to sort of have that fourth Monday when open, knowing that that could be a work session. So
Right.
we're not moving the work session to other times other than a Monday slot.
Okay,
Except for during budget.
I have one more question related to that. So whoever brought up the 3 members for putting something on a work session, awesome, right? Why should it be harder? But what should the role be, right? So Travis will obviously have many things he wants us to discuss at work session, but we also have things that we would like to discuss. Does just one council member bring that to Travis? Do we want the whole 2 council members could bring an issue to Travis to then put on the next work session, the same as a council meeting?
well, you pretty much have been working as a whole council. And when you start talking, then you say, well, we need to put that on the work session. So it's sort of come about on its own.
So the current council rules of procedure talk about, again, as Ross pointed out, 2 council members can get an item on the regular agenda. This one's calling for a third, mostly because it's almost a special meeting, if you will. However, it still could be called by just the mayor. So if, in the council rules of procedures, that agenda item can also be placed by staff with the mayor as essentially that second as long as the mayor is supportive of staff putting an item on the agenda, it goes on the agenda.
Now, you're talking about council agendas?
Correct. So what
Okay.
I'm referencing that by saying if the work session could be called in a similar manner, manner where it's staff going to the mayor or 2 council members,
Yep,
that can work too.
that's fine by me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
If you nod at him, we don't have to keep talking about it.
yeah, okay,
So just to clarify, both, staff goes to the mayor and also to.
And
council.
or.
No,
yeah.
and/or.
And/or.
yeah.
Gotcha, perfect.
So on that note, would you like to talk about what you'd like to talk in addition to the work sessions next week?
If we could, unfortunately, talk a little bit more of council rules procedures.
Okay.
Were there anything else in the rules of procedure that council wanted to look at changing? Whether it was how meetings are called, items are placed on the agenda. Honestly, the largest part of it, like I said, was committee structures are referenced in the rules. That's why that was part of the discussion item. But is there anything else in there? Hearing none? Okay.
Was there anything that you noticed that you think we should change?
No, I don't think so. No, there's only been one instance, I believe, where there's a virtual requirement in here as well. Remember that, John, when that came up? So,
Oh yeah, that's something I'd like to talk about. Thank you for reminding me of that. To bring council members who are newly elected up to speed, I think that one of the rules in our procedures is that council members are not allowed to virtually be present for closed sessions of council. And ironically, members of the public, or so say we have a session of council where we're considering hiring somebody. We can have our hiring consultant virtually present, but we can't have a council member virtually present. To me, it seems that if, I can appreciate the importance of there being, presence in real life, whenever possible. But the realities of illness and travel sometimes make it that virtual attendance is better than nothing. So I personally would ask that we provide for virtual attendance at closed sessions.
I'm supportive of that.
And in general, I think that the council should always be present when possible. But once during some of the most important hires, that we've made, I haven't been able to be present because of a wedding in one instance. And I certainly would have appreciated being part of the conversation, and I wasn't allowed to be, so.
You know where in this rules and procedures it talks about virtual?
that's what I was just trying to read through quickly again.
I read it earlier today, but I can't remember what.
Which one?
I just can't get over the meeting when we were trying to decide about virtual, and then like literally 3 months later, COVID, boom.
Decorum?
Top of the page is procedural matters.
Well, since the pages aren't numbered,
Yeah, PDF page 18,
okay.
And that'd be the original document, right?
the one that's in the Dropbox.
So if you've got just the PDF of the rules of procedures, it's 18 of 21, which would make it
I've
in
got
the
you.
packet.
The language says electronic participation is not allowed for any meeting when it's anticipated the meeting may go into closed session.
So essentially what you're saying, what we want to change is that council members may be virtual during a closed session, which we argued about for several different times, if I recall, and
The rules currently require that the absent member must have a legitimate reason for not attending. We can't be digital simply for convenience sake. This is for any meeting. They say that you're not counted as a part of the quorum, and that everyone be able to communicate clearly. The last section says electronic participation is not allowed for a meeting when it's anticipated it may go into closed session. And this is under a section about electronic meetings and attendance for council members. So I think we could simply strike that. Could we strike? I think that might be a simple way to do this, is striking the fifth rule if that's what the council wants to do.
What was the reason for that being in there?
we didn't know that we could make a virtual session private. When that rule was made,
This was all pre-COVID.
yes.
And I
Okay.
think we've gotten more comfortable with the idea of electronic. My only concern is I do think there needs to be a quorum present.
Sure.
I mean, if you were all, or if, I think there could be a question if the quorum was all virtual, whether it's truly a public meeting or not. I don't think there's a clear answer on that, but I could see a challenge. And that was during COVID, one of the questions about
And we met, yeah.
virtual meetings about, well, is it really?
It was defined by the COVID Emergency Act, though.
Right.
So, I mean, there was,
But that's gone away.
right,
Yep, yep.
yes, but I'm saying there was structure
Right.
at that time. And the prior issue had been that there was a closed session in an HR matter, and one of the council members was not in a private
Oh.
location, I believe.
Which would be problematic.
Which is one of the reasons we did it, because we can't ensure that the closed meeting
The
is
closed
meeting,
closed when
that's
you're
right.
That was my-
online with somebody on
That
the
was my
phone.
only concern.
Right, and I would say, if you had a closed meeting to discuss legal strategy with counsel,
Right.
and that person that's meeting virtually has, unbeknownst to everybody else,
That's where the
has other
discussion
people
came.
there,
Right,
that could potentially destroy attorney-client privilege.
that was my,
There's
that was
also
my concern.
similar risks that we bear in not patting down council members on the way into closed sessions. I mean, I could have a speakerphone on in closed session, but we trust each other and we're elected and entrusted with responsibility and authority. I think that we all have to assume that people aren't going to have secret attendees at, virtual, in virtual rooms. Yeah, does that make sense, what I'm saying? I don't think we need to police ourselves that way. We should police ourselves by following the law.
And it was a discretionary issue. Like, they did not use good discretion, and code was changed because of it. And, maybe it could have been handled differently at that point. And certainly we live in a virtual world, as you pointed out, Stephen, that, COVID has changed everything, and the technology has become much better, and the regulation of monitoring, even now, we're in a virtual setting in some form. So I'm supportive as well.
No one's spoken against it. I think Travis needs to see a few more of us nod, though, if this is something you're okay with.
You could always insert the silence as affirmation. Remember, I'm a big fan of that one.
Oh, yeah.
You just made all your meetings much longer.
Well, maybe that's something that we know we have to give you an affirmative action or whatever.
So
But
this
that
will,
people could,
right,
to
so
think
I'll
about it.
take all the comments received tonight, I'll make the revisions to the rules of procedure.
Okay.
You'll
Right.
see this again at the next meeting.
okay. That sounds good. Okay, thank you. Now, vacancy on Telecommunications Board, Human Rights Commission, and the Sustainability Commission. I think I had it down that for sustainability, the deadline for applications would be at the end of January, which is the 31st, with the appointment being, and the first meeting in February. Anybody who wants to apply, just go on the website, under the forms, put in the application, state which committee you're looking to be on. Let's see, are you going to the sustainability meeting?
No, actually, that was something I was going to say, is I am unable to make the sustainability meeting that's going to be this Wednesday at the public library at 5:45. I might try to zoom in for the first 15 minutes. I have had I have this PEA meeting thing at 6 o'clock that seems to be overlapping all
Let's
the
see.
time with the sustainability.
Are you
but-
going to the sustainability?
I'll be there.
Okay. I think I might be there, but not sure.
So if someone,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be great.
So if you could bring that up, or just let them know, that'd be great. Telecommunications, anything on, as far as board members are concerned? Okay. All right. City manager, department heads, and council reports?
So the main thing I have, as all of council's aware, Jeremy Brill has put in his notice, and so he will no longer be with the city at the end of February. And so leading up to that, Jeremy as I've had conversations with Jeremy as well as other staff on the position. I know council's talked about not necessarily being reactive, but trying to be proactive so that when these kind of vacancies occur, that we're looking at job descriptions and the overall operations within the organization. And so I want to propose to council that we have a work session next week on Monday night to discuss just that, the job description of the city engineer, as well as the overall structure of the organization. One of the things that I'm going to really point out is the job description that, now granted, it was a new, Jeremy's the first in-house city engineer, so the job description that was drafted was kind of a first take at it, not at all what Jeremy does, and quite honestly, maybe not what our next city engineer should do. So anyway, I want to have that conversation next week, Monday, pending availability.
And you will have documentation, you'll have suggestions, you'll have a way it is and kind of what
Correct.
you're looking for?
Yep, you'll have all that supporting information in by Friday, just like if it were a regular council meeting.
And that would be at, what, 5:45?
On the 22nd?
Does that work?
Okay,
Expressing an opinion, not announcing a fact.
no, thank you. Okay. That answers that. Did you have anything else?
So council has all received what I'm calling first draft of the budget, and we did actually receive an email today that we're going through all the forms again just to make sure, but we received an email today from the Department of Management that there was an error on the inputs related to debt service. We're just making sure that that didn't impact our
Okay.
draft budget at this point. We are also doing a secondary review of the whole budget to make sure that if a number's off, typo happens, something, that we can catch that. So if you see something that stands out, it's pretty glaring, please reach out to us so that we can double check and make sure that it's not the result of just a typo. So encourage that. And that's all I have to report.
Carrie? Anything from the table? Going once, going twice? Brent, anything from you? Start down to you.
With our first snowfall, I'm sure that the street department was pretty busy plowing vehicles. And then Chief Thien, I know a police officer doing tow time is pretty difficult and tickets, so appreciate your staff for doing that. Other than that, got nothing.
Christopher?
I have nothing tonight.
Kirsten?
Randy was forced to abandon the Chamber of Commerce or not be on that board anymore, and the mayor asked me to step in. We had our first meeting on Friday of last week. We had to do it by Zoom because of the weather. I know I got big shoes to fill for Randy because he's been on it for a long time and has done some good work with the chamber. One of the things we discussed was the budget. They are concerned that they didn't get the $17,500 that they've gotten in the past, and we're hoping to get it. I told them we were having our budget meetings coming up, and we wouldn't have an answer for them for probably a month or so before we could get back to them. I did meet with Jessica for a couple hours, had a really good talk with her. And the one thing they do have coming up is Decorah Restaurant Week. This is the first one they're doing, and it's next week from the 22nd to the 28th. 16 of the restaurants within town are participating in it, and they'll be offering specials and things like that. This is kind of a slow time of the year for most of those, so we're hoping to encourage people to get out and eat at our restaurants.
Very good. Mr. Zittergrun?
Madam Mayor, if we're going to be formal, let's do it. I was talking to someone yesterday. This is just a reminder, I guess, who likes to listen to our council meetings while they exercise. And I think exercise alone is enough punishment, but good for them. And they express frustration that sometimes we forget to use our microphones, and sometimes even when our microphones are on, we sort of talk away from them and people can't hear us clearly. So please practice good mic etiquette for the sake of a public that both wants to and deserves to be informed. I was going to say something about the streets and the police for all the work that, and to be honest, almost all the city departments are affected in one way or another when we have the kind of weather we've been having. I'm sure things haven't been perfect with water and wastewater and maybe even the wastewater treatment plant. And I know the fire departments had to go out in conditions that are dangerous. So profoundly grateful for the people who do so much work that's on scene, but is appreciated. I didn't want to pull two things off the consent agenda because I don't need a reputation like that. But when the street light that we're replacing up on Highland, I'd like to, at some point in the next year or two, talk seriously as a leadership body about our subdivision ordinance, whether or not we should have a street light plan. Do we need lighting in every single place in the city, or are there places where motion activated lights might make more sense? I looked at our budget, and we spend about $140,000 a year on the electricity to provide our streetlights. Maybe every single dollar is well spent, but I think we owe it to the public to make sure that's true. And we spend about another $40,000 a year building and maintaining the things. So I just, it's a lot of money. I'd like to see the stars in this beautiful bowl we have. So I want to think about our street lighting plan. And then finally, tomorrow at 2, I hope I'm not stealing the mayor's thing here, but tomorrow at 1:30, Mike up at the airport gets an award for long service and as a flight instructor, a flyer. And so just a reminder to go to that if you can, 1:30.
Are you going up? You're going up for then?
Yeah, I think I'll be
Yeah, because I think I can go up tomorrow too, so if you can, that'd be great. Okay.
With the recent snows and watching the fire department trustees come in here, I just want to remind people, if you do have a fire hydrant, please clear it in case of emergency. Makes their job a lot easier if they get called out, especially when it's 25, 30 below. Things get pretty dicey for them. That's all I have this evening, Mayor.
I really appreciate you bringing that up. Ross?
Well, I guess we'll continue on the weather theme. Mine sidewalks. Just reminding people to be good neighbors and to shovel in a timely fashion. I know the snow was heavy and shoveling is hard, and it's been very, very cold, which sets the snow rapidly and makes it potentially harmful to be out for longer periods of time. But as you're clearing your hydrant, make sure you're clearing your sidewalk as well, and be conscientious about that, as our staff are out issuing reminders and enforcing the ordinances that we have in place. So, please be a good neighbor, and if you can't, look for your reminder.
Okay. Emily?
I was going to bring up the Sustainability Commission tomorrow. I know that tomorrow they are going to be looking at the waste subcommittee and language related to waste, and then they're also doing a transportation subcommittee update. And I am curious if someone does go, just to ask, how does that fit into the 2024 update that is proposed in general? Are they going to roll those in? Or are they going to listen to public input? So if anybody is going to the Sustainability Commission tomorrow, I would appreciate that. And then I was also going to comment on the weather. And the funny thing was, the last time I saw Andy and Jeremy, they were at City Hall commenting that they had no snow to clear, and I think they jinxed us. But I just wanted to thank all the city employees. I know that the weather makes their jobs more difficult. It does provide park and rec activities to do, but in the frigid cold, that makes it even harder. So thank you for all of your hard work through public safety, park and rec, streets, water, everything. So thank you very much. And I guess we'll be seeing a lot of each other in the next 2 weeks. So.
I'm happy to say, thanks to Steve Zittergrun's help with the computer, I understand the budget. I know how to work with it. I can fully use it without having to have a paper copy.
Fantastic.
This is a one-time offer, and I only will provide IT advice to mayors. So,
well, it helped a lot, and I was happy when I got it that I was actually able to use it the way all of you told me that it would be. So
my first year on council, police officers delivered us the budget book. That was the custom. And police officers never come to my door. So it was sort of like my whole family was like, what are they doing? And then they had this big giant budget book.
Okay, well, since we're gonna be seeing a lot of each other, can we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you very much.